Thanks, Marianne. You gave the intros, but I want to give each of you a chance to say 2 or 3 sentences about kind of what your background is, and we've got a shipper, we've got a broker, and we've got one of the tech providers here in the sector. So you want to start with you, Ryan?
Sounds great. So Ryan Rogers, Chief Transformation Officer. Been with Covenant a little over a year. Been in the industry over 20 years. Started my career with US Express on the financial side, then involved in their truckload brokerage operation. Took a little time off and then spent some time with Amazon on the procurement side of the business. And then again, started with Covenant. As part of my role, I have, I guess, the 4th best job at Covenant. Matt said he had the 3rd, so not quite as cool as Matt's, but have an opportunity to be involved in the tech side, lead that team along with M&A, innovation with Matt, and strategic planning, things like that.
Hey, I'm Ken Evans. I'm the founder and CEO of Konexial. We're a telematics, fleet management, and digital freight company. Before Konexial, spent 25 years basically running supply chain logistics for major manufacturers. So people like Koch Industries, Spirit Aerosystems, Eastman Chemical. And, I think it's great to be here, first of all. Thanks for having us. I don't think you guys get thanked enough for that. But real excited to be here to talk about what digital transformation looks like and what the market changes are going to be in digital freight.
Great. And Charlie?
My name is Charley Dehoney. Super excited to be here. Not quite certain why you guys are all still here, but thank you for sticking around. So my background is supply chain. 15 years since college, I started with Worldwide Express back in their early days. Went on to build and sell a couple of small supply chain companies on my own. Spent the last 6 years as an early stage investor, advisor, and executive in a number of tech-enabled logistics startups from Cargomatic and ShipHawk and Airspace Technologies. And most recently, worked with a private equity group to acquire a company in the middle of the country. So I just bought Manning's Truck Brokerage, a 50-year-old brokerage out of Omaha, Nebraska. And I just moved my wife from San Diego to Omaha, so please pray for me.
Very good. So you've been on some of this change. It seems like we're pulling 20 years of modernization into the last 5. Like what was the sea change that just made it click all of a sudden?
So I think there's really a few trends, key trends that are really fueling this growth and the capital coming into the industry. And certainly it starts with the technology stack. The mobile devices have become pervasive. Everybody's got one in their pocket. The cloud computing and the developer tools that are available now. Right. You don't have to spin up servers to become a software company. AWS does that for you. I would also say that the education cycle of the venture capitalists has really started to accelerate. 6 years ago, trying to raise venture capital for a supply chain business was a daunting task. Now there was 10 VCs here today. So I think what's really changed is that e-commerce has exposed the value and the necessity of logistics, and it's really brought our industry out of the warehouse and into the boardroom. And so I think when you're seeing all of these trends kind of converge at the same time, it's created this very frothy market and this influx of capital into the business.
Yeah, certainly. And so, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, and I know, Ryan, we've talked about, there's a ton of vendors out here, and all of them have something cool that you want, but how do you, at a large carrier, how do you guys go about prioritizing, what we're going to evaluate, what we're going to implement, what are we going to attack first, what's going to be, a next year project?
Well, it's really difficult, but it's a lot of fun. So as Matt said, we explore a lot of opportunities, anything from software to actually even products for our trucks. But
right.
For us, we're looking for what makes it more efficient from a standpoint of our operation back office that's going to make us more successful with our customer. And we keep a very open mind to that, because we may not have, the ideas we may have, there may not be products for it, and then we see products that we're like, hey, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. So it's, I think, having a very open-minded to research and explore, but again, it goes back to what really makes the efficiency in the system work the best for us and for our customers, obviously.
Right on. What do you think, Ken? I mean, so you started as a hardware provider, but now we're kind of getting into, sort of horizontal expansion. How are you guys kind of prioritizing what is the next logical extension for
Right. So, when we got into the hardware space, we saw the opportunity that, hey, all of the trucks in the country have to be electronically enabled. It's over a 4-year period of time. What most people don't realize is that the majority of that change is actually going to happen between now and year end. So there's 2 to 2.5 million trucks that still have to do an upgrade.
Right.
And the reality is if you didn't buy your hardware in the last 24 months, it's probably not upgradable. So, you know, we've invested in hardware that makes that easy. So, you know, this is the hardware, state-of-the-art telematics. It has cellular tracking built into it, as well as all the Bluetooth, GPS, etc. Most people can't believe it's this size. I mean, once you plug it in, it's about 10 millimeters tall. And so we brought it at a price point which is very different. And our strategy all along has been establish and meet the needs of the carriers, and then be able to deliver services to them. Freight matching services, fuel discounting services, other insurance services, those type of things, that now we have a portal to deliver those straight into the mobile app that we built.
Very good. And so on the brokerage side, you're kind of going through, you said a 50-year-old brokerage, and so, you know, what's your perspective on what do I attack first?
So that's competing priorities is a really interesting conversation in a digitization strategy approach. And so we just simply mapped out the workflow and really started to kind of put some data around level of effort, time spent, and we're really kind of going step by step in the workflow of a typical transaction and trying to eliminate the white space the best that we can. And I will say that originally part of our thesis, we thought we were going to have to build something ourselves, and it's been really encouraging to discover over the last 6 months that with, you know, products like Trucker Tools and Parade and HubTrans and, you know, all these amazing solutions that are coming out that freight geeks like me have been dreaming about for years, it's really becoming, I think, digital brokerage is almost a no-code solution now. You do not have to have an engineering team to digitize a brokerage. And that ultimately, accessibility, I think, is the thing that's the most exciting about what's going on right now.
Yeah, that's good. So in my experience, and I've been in tech, you know, almost 2 decades, you know, hardware is hard to change. I'm sure Ken can attest to that.
Yeah.
He's quite excited about that, actually. Software is a little bit easier to change, but sometimes just getting the people to change their behavior is a phenomenal challenge. And so, you know, Ryan, why don't you talk about some of the organizational change as you bring in these new systems, as you go to cloud? What have you seen in terms of trying to get people to change their ways?
It's difficult. It's a challenge. People get used to what they like and how they do it. So introducing new technology, even new processes, new system, it takes a lot of work. It's constantly showing the value add and the benefit. And then the one thing that's really a challenge is if you get a software product and it solves 1 or 2 things for someone internally, they kind of stick with those 1 or 2 things. So what we're trying to do is focus on even the products we have, how do we get use of 7 or 8 out of 10 instead of just 1 or 2. But we talk a lot about mindset. We formed groups inside the company. We have a continuous improvement team that all they do is tackle tactical opportunities, and they work on the mindset. And you find the people that are more open to change and adapt, and then hopefully they will influence others. And it's all about how you approach people. If you approach people respectfully and encourage them and just give them some opportunities and tools and work with them, it usually comes out. But it can be difficult. I think a lot of us have a little bit of resistance to change, and some have a lot. So it's just working through and having those conversations.
You know, I agree change management is difficult, and getting people to change is difficult. I will give you an exception to that, though. When you give someone a piece of new technology and actually is designed well and makes their life simpler, it's amazing how rapidly they'll adopt it. So when we design our products, we always focus on what's the user's pain point, what is the experience they're looking for, what do they have to do today, and then how can I make that product different so that it's so well designed and it feels like just a natural progression, they don't even notice the change. So we believe that design plays a key part of that, whether it's software design, hardware design, ecosystem design. It's very important, and that's why people love simple products.
And that's what Gary Vaynerchuk told us on day one was you've got to be relentlessly obsessed with your customers. So,
correct.
I mean, how your customers are rolling around, how are you getting out there and getting that feedback from them? And
well, for
you're doing
us,
ride-alongs?
Well, we do ride-alongs, but you know, we talk to a lot of our customers.
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea that we came up with, I guess, when we started this company is we need to be the ones talking to these guys day to day and helping them implement the technology, because they're going to give us feedback that solves, you know, 1,000 other people's problems if you'll just listen to them.
Right.
And so we intentionally based all of our customer service and tech support here in the United States. It's in Knoxville, just north of here. And we actually have customers that will go out of their way to stop by because they want to meet the people they're talking to. And so we think that that interaction is very valuable in helping us design better.
Yeah. What's been your experience with getting people to kind of change their behavior, adopt new tools, Charlie?
Well, look, I think it starts with culture, right? And culture is largely about who you select to be on your team. And so I think I think you guys have both nailed it. There's not much more that I can add, and I would just also add something that sometimes if the people won't change, you have to change the people. And so I think it's really important that you're looking at, you know, who is this individual? Are they going to be tech friendly? Is software ultimately going to be something that they're willing to embrace? And if they're not, and that's core to your business strategy, then you maybe just need to find some new teammates.
So we have a way that we try to get in front of that issue. Before we ever interview somebody, they've got 3 boxes they got to check for us: humility, integrity, and professionalism. If they have those 3 boxes, then we'll care about what you know and what you can do. Right. What are your skills and your talents? But if we see misses in any one of those 3, we pass and we go to the next one, because those things you can't teach after someone's been out and working. Yeah. They either have them or they don't.
You're avoiding the brilliant jerk.
We look for that first, and if you have that, you can be a part of our team.
Very good. So with a lot of the new tech that comes out, and we've had conversations about, you know, scale, like maybe Ryan has, is really great because you have an R&D budget. You have people who can be devoted to kind of rapid response team. But in some ways that can make you less nimble too. You know, a small team can turn things around incredibly fast, and you know, this is something we've experienced at FreightWaves too. We've got more people now. It's we can't be quite as nimble as we used to be, but I think we're still pretty well there. How do you balance that at a massive carrier the size of Covenant?
Well, as you mentioned, there's a lot of positives around that. We do have a great tech staff that can turn things pretty quick, but some of the systems that we have, I mean, we were not, as I say, we weren't born in the cloud, so we've got a lot of on-prem products that we're trying to continuously upgrade, get to the next level, adding new hardware and software. So it can be restrictive at times, and it can be restrictive because all those things talk together. So when we're putting in new technology, if we trip over one thing, it can cause a lot more issues.
Yeah.
So the new
it can be very expensive.
Yeah, the new piece going in can cause a lot of issues. So we have to be conscientious of that. We're continuing to use more products than ever that are SaaS-based or cloud-based products, and create integrations. We were talking backstage about some of the legacy software products that we have today are on-prem, but any of the development tools that we're building, most all are going to be built or will be built or be transitioned into the cloud to make it easier, and that way it's accessible. So we have a lot more employees than ever working remote, and having that flexibility and being able to connect through that way makes it much, much more simple.
Yeah, you have to. So what's been your experience with kind of being nimble versus having that scale to experiment and trial and error?
And so both have their advantages, right? The large companies have to manage inertia, right? And just to move 1 degree is very, very difficult. Small companies have to try like hell just to build a little bit of momentum. And I think the delicate balance between the two is very, very important. But I think when you're looking yourself in the mirror and you're trying to figure out what you want to be as a company, depending on where you sit on that spectrum, you've got to ultimately design your strategy around that. You've got to fill your team with people that are the right type of people for the business at that stage. Yeah. So one of the things that we've been able to witness, all of us, in the last 10 years is the rise of these massive companies. And you know, I like to think about a tweet that I read from a venture capitalist one time, and his perspective was, you know, Bezos never thought he was going to be running, or Bezos never ran a $3 billion or $1 trillion company, whatever he is, right? He never ran a business that big before. It's all about who you hire. Yeah. So having the right people on the bus at that stage of the company, I think, is the most important.
And that changes as you go from a nimble to a behemoth, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
and it's absolutely okay, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you were to ask every individual here, like within the room, what is your sweet spot? What kind of a company are you kind of built to be involved with? Everybody probably has some attributes about the company that they're with now, or companies they've been with that were desirable, that they liked, that resonated and fit with those people. So I think it is very rare that you find that entrepreneurial CEO, founder that can take the company from concept to IPO. Uber's IPOing this week, and they're not even allowing the founding CEO on the stage.
Right.
So I think it's not uncommon to see businesses hit those inflection points and need to transition out, whether it's leadership, frontline staff, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, your 0 to 1 people may be different people than your 1 to 1,000 people. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Ken, you guys are still fairly nimble as a hardware device can be. What are the challenges you're seeing down the road as this new wave of devices has to be converted over? Is that something you guys have started planning for yet and scaling up?
Well, we clearly are planning for it, but what I'll tell you is that wave 1 of this of the ELD mandate was end of 2017. The actual amount of change happening this year is 5x that.
Yeah. Everybody waited till the last minute, right?
Everybody waited till the last minute, and we're actually predicting a repeat for a majority of that 2 million. And the reason is because we don't find a lot of mentality difference between very small carriers and even the mid-sized carriers, because a lot of them used to be small carriers. So we're trying to educate people on what it takes to do this change and to get in front of it. But I was asked by a VC, what's the number one concern that you have about growing, because you're going to grow so rapidly? And I was very honest. I said, number one is continue to find the people with those criteria that we have: humility, integrity, professionalism. We know that if we have those people, we'll be highly successful, but those are rare qualities to find in today's world. So we're trying to look for those people in advance of the need.
Very good.
Yeah.
What I like about your business is that there's some regulatory assistance on the change, right? Nobody just came up with the idea of an ELD and then it got pervasive and it proliferated.
I'm going to like it better this year than I did 2 years ago, because there was so much noise in the market.
Yeah.
But I think the noise is gone now, and people realize that it can actually help their business.
But now the large carriers like like Covenant, they've got so many integrations to do. They get well out ahead of these things. But it's going to be the small guys that are waiting to the last minute. Are we going to see the same kind of hardware buildup and the bloom of ELDs that we saw in 2017, or has most of the washout happened and the survivors are going to be around?
Well, I think the washout will continue all the way through this year, with people dropping ELDs, going out of business. But your question about is everybody out in front of it, I'll tell you no, they're not. And my concern is some large carriers are not starting soon enough. They're underestimating, well, it's just another ELD, another electronic system. So we're encouraging people to get out in front of it, because it does require different behavior. The technology actually functions differently. And so we think it's very important that people manage that change, because that is the most difficult part of it.
Like we said, there's a number of ELD providers out there. There's a number of, there's so much flashy tech out here that I want it all. I can't have it all. Is there, and then drivers are cruising through 8 different brokerage apps. Is there app fatigue? Is there analysis paralysis happening? How do you sift through that in your business?
Look, I think app fatigue is a real thing. I think there's a number of companies that have been very, very successful at winning the race for the most important, valuable real estate in our industry. And that, in my view, is the home screen on a trucker's phone. So if your app lives there and you've got that one-to-one with that trucker, I think you've done something very positive and meaningful. So I think if you look at our side of the transportation space, it always lags behind the people side of the transportation space from an innovation perspective. And when you look at what's happened in final mile delivery or ride sharing, You know, ultimately, if you want to be successful in that business as an owner-operator, you've got to do DoorDash, Lyft, Uber, and a host of others. So we're starting to see that right now in our space, and we're starting to see apps that are actually adding value to truckers and feeding them and bringing them meaningful revenue. So in my view, is there a little bit of app fatigue? Yeah. Is that going to wear anybody out or make anybody stop driving a truck? No. The truck driving is already a hard enough business as it is to be successful in. And so I think there's still plenty of room on those guys' phone for new apps, despite the fact that the rest of the world thinks that they're only going to use one or two.
Well, I agree that no truck driver wants to load 20 different apps. Okay, so when we designed our software, we designed it to basically be a Swiss Army knife approach, so that if you want to plug in XYZ service to this, there's a home for that, right? So it's not just the logbook, it's also where's the fuel information, where's the load information, how do I capture my documents, it's all done within the same app.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we basically open that ecosystem up to anyone who wants to put services through that. So I think it'll be interesting. I think there won't just be one solution, there'll be a handful, but the people who do user interface and ease of use best will win.
I agree with that.
I think there definitely is. The one advantage that we have right now is with our driver force, we don't have that issue because we have one app, and it's the Covenant Drive app that we've designed. And what we've done is we've really designed that so they can get everything inside of that one app. And even if it needs to shoot them out to somewhere else, we keep them inside the app to do that. So it makes it really easy with communicating back to us. But outside of that, for our outside third-party carriers, I think that there's app fatigue and it's complicated, but I think that they've got a lot of different issues that not just apps. They've got apps, they get email blasts, and you know what I think they really have, and I was talking to some other guys last night about this, is I think they got check call fatigue. I mean, they're still getting check calls all the time, and when we talk about visibility and the things like what Project 44 is trying to close that gap rapidly, it makes a big difference but we still have we have a challenge with needing that open mindset. So that driver is still sitting there concerned that we're tracking or we're following them, but we don't want to have to call them when it's a bad time. They could be getting fuel, they could be at a rest stop for using the restroom, or they could be asleep, and we don't want to have to call them, so we want to monitor that. But I think what they don't realize is they're being tracked anyways. I mean, we're all being tracked. I mean, I'll walk out of here and I bet my LinkedIn will tell me to connect with everybody within 30 feet. I have no idea exactly how it works, but it's pretty cool. But they don't want those check calls, and if we can encourage the driver force across the entire market to be open to that and being comfortable with it, I think it would make the process a little bit easier, because nobody wants to get, and now our customers, of course, they expect the Amazon-like updates rapidly, and it's really difficult when you have you're calling all the time versus it just dropping you.
I think what I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years is that 6 years ago, trying to put an app on a trucker's phone was hard because he had a flip phone, and then the guy that had a smartphone didn't own his truck. So to find the balance now, it's everywhere. And so where I do think that there was a little bit of concern about Big Brother, over the years, I don't see that as much. I think where a lot of that concerns comes from is, as an industry, we perceive these drivers to have that concern. And so thereby, the way we communicate with these drivers oftentimes, especially in the brokerage world, is I'll hear folks on our team, telling the driver what this communication or what this technology is going to do. And we're almost like overselling the fact that it's not tracking them. And really, I think at the end of the day, these guys all have apps, and they know that when they open up their Amazon tells them the next 10 things that they need to buy. So I think we're all getting more comfortable with living in and around that technology. And I give the drivers a ton of credit, because I've seen that evolution in the last 5 or 6 years, and there's a lot of people embracing it.
I think there's still just a little challenge with it, with the tracking portion. For example, our drivers today, we have over 95+ adoption using our product, using our app, the Covenant Drive app. But we don't see that the same on the third-party carrier side. But on ours, they love it. They are passionate. We don't require them to do that. That's just an added benefit of communication, and they actually love it. So I think the adoption of having the smartphone is significantly there. But I think the tracking piece has still got to fill in some gaps.
If it's a broker that you're doing business with, if they're tracking you, they have an information advantage on you they know this is your home city, you like to go there, you are going to be the cheapest truck there, and that's, I think that can bother them some. At least that's what I've heard some of them say when we talk about
around that area.
Yeah,
I agree, but I think the approach that Ken was sharing me a little bit more about his business and some of the value that this data that he's collecting on these drivers is going to bring, and I think the precision of the offer is going to become more and more important in the future. So instead of getting the email blast or instead of getting that shotgun, offer, what load do you want? Finding them the right load at the right time for the right price based on their capacity, based on their equipment type and where they are specifically. Those are the really interesting things. So I give you high marks for thinking that through. I think it was really, really thoughtful.
We call it a smart hierarchy of data, and the more data we can get, the better job we can do meeting the guy's needs. And if he's getting what he wants, he's going to be happy with the technology.
We need that same tool in our inbox too, because I have email fatigue.
I do too. Well, guys, thanks for your time, and really, really appreciate you guys being here at Transparency. And
thank you.
And just a few more speakers, and we'll let you go. Stick
I
around.
have to at least throw a shout out to Chattanooga. They're watching back home. They've got us on live
good.
stream.
Yeah. Hey.
That's a heck
So is our,
Chattanooga.
So is our crew back
Thank
in
you,
Omaha.
guys.
So
Yeah. they got a
thank
big
you to you
stream.
people at Transparency for putting this out there. My wife will actually finally know what I do for a living, so this is going to be good. So.
Fantastic.
Great.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.